The brutal California sun hammered the roof of the sleek Rivian R1S, its electric blue paint shimmering on the heat-warped shoulder of the highway. Ethan Sterling swore under his breath, his gaze fixed on the blank, unresponsive touchscreen where, moments ago, a map had been guiding him back to San Francisco. The climate control wheezed, fighting a losing battle against the triple-digit Central Valley heat that melted the asphalt into a watery illusion. "Great," he muttered, tugging at the collar of his custom dress shirt. "Just perfect." His phone, a top-secret Sterling Dynamics prototype, was a useless brick with no signal. The venture capital meeting in Los Angeles had dragged on, and now, at 32, the celebrated tech billionaire was well and truly stranded. A faded bullet-hole sign caught his eye. Miles Gas Station, 200 YDs. With a sigh, Ethan coaxed the truck back to life. The electric motors whirred into action, and he steered the vehicle down a cracked access road until he saw the derelict structure. The station was a ghost from a bygone era, its corroded pumps casting long, skeletal shadows across the shattered concrete. The convenience store's windows were blown out, and tumbleweeds were piled against its peeling stucco walls. Ethan parked beneath the rusted metal awning that once sheltered travelers. The place was utterly silent, a sun-baked tomb. He just needed to find a restroom and hope a system reboot would bring the navigation back online. "I can't believe I'm doing this," he mumbled, his eyes landing on the station's cinder-block outbuilding. The metal door, covered in layers of faded graffiti, was cracked open just enough to reveal the darkness within. That's when he heard it, a faint whisper, almost lost in the oppressive silence. A child's voice. Ethan's hand froze an inch from the door. In his years building Sterling Dynamics, he'd learned to trust the gut feeling that had saved him from bad investments and backstabbing partners, and right now, that gut feeling was screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. "Shh, Ava, it's going to be okay. Owen, hand me another diaper." The voice was young, impossibly young. He nudged the door open. A blade of harsh afternoon light cut through the gloom, illuminating a scene that would be seared into his memory forever. 3 small children occupied the cramped space. The eldest, a girl no older than 6, knelt on the filthy floor, changing a baby's diaper atop a brightly colored school backpack featuring Elsa and Anna, strategically unfolded to serve as a changing mat. Another toddler, a carbon copy of the first, held a small keychain flashlight with a chubby fist, its beam dancing across the surreal tableau. "Whoa!" The word escaped him before he could stop it. The reaction was instantaneous. The little girl scrambled to her feet with shocking speed, planting herself between Ethan and the toddlers. Her fierce green eyes, blazing with a protective fire, locked onto his. "Please," she said, her voice a fragile mix of fear and astonishing resolve. "Don't call the police?" The weight of his prototype phone suddenly felt immense in the pocket of his slacks. His hand twitched towards it, a motion the little girl did not miss. "My name is Chloe," she said, the words tumbling out in a nervous torrent. "These are Owen and Ava. They're my siblings." She took a shaky breath, and Ethan saw a storm of emotions in her eyes, pain, fear, and an unshakable determination. "Our mother. She died 3 days ago. We don't have anyone else." As if on cue, the twins remained unnervingly still. They couldn't be more than 2 years old, Ethan guessed. Owen's grip on the flashlight was tight, his knuckles white. Ava, her diaper half changed, clung to her older sister's leg like a lifeline. Ethan Sterling had not achieved his status by being impulsive. Every move he made was a data-driven calculation, a risk assessed from 1,000 angles. The architect, the tech journals called him after his audacious takeover of a rival AI firm, where he'd restructured the entire company in a single weekend. "He runs on code, not emotion," his employees whispered. But this scene, this raw, unfiltered reality, bypassed all his firewalls. Maybe it was the frozen backpack, a beacon of childhood innocence in this desolate wasteland. Or the way tiny Chloe stood like a warrior, shielding her family. Or maybe it was the twins' eyes, wide with fear, but shining with absolute trust in their sister. "How long have you been here?" he asked, his voice softer than he'd heard it in years. Chloe hesitated, her mind visibly weighing the risk of trusting a stranger. "Since last night," she finally admitted. "We were on our way to our aunt's house in Boston, but—" She bit her lip, and Ethan noticed that her clothes, though stained, were of decent quality. "We ran out of money, and I don't remember her address." He took a closer look at the small trio. Despite the grime, they were cared for. Chloe's brown hair was pulled back in a lopsided ponytail, but the twins' hair was clean, their clothes wrinkled, but not dirty. The school backpack held diapers, wipes, a few spare outfits, and, he saw with a pang, a well-worn teddy bear. "I'm thirsty," Owen mumbled, the flashlight beam dipping. Ethan saw the flicker of pain in Chloe's eyes as she glanced at a nearly empty water bottle by the backpack. "It'll cool down soon," she promised her brother, but the fear in her own gaze was unmistakable. The California heat was lethal, and their resources were clearly dwindling. In that instant, something inside him broke. In his sprawling San Francisco penthouse, 3 guest suites sat empty, their only purpose to impress the occasional business associate. His walk-in closet was larger than most apartments. His chef's kitchen, a temple of stainless steel and marble, was used for little more than morning espresso. "Chloe," he said, kneeling down to her level, not caring as his designer jeans met the grimy concrete. "I live in San Francisco. I have a big apartment with empty rooms." He took a deep breath, the words feeling foreign and monumental. "You can stay there for now, until we find your aunt." Chloe's eyes widened, a fragile dance of hope and suspicion in their green depths. "You're not going to call the police?" "No," Ethan promised, startled by his own conviction. "I won't call the police." She studied his face for a long moment, with an intensity that made him feel as if she were scanning his very soul, looking past the carefully constructed facade. "How do we know we can trust you?" she finally asked. It was a question investors asked constantly, though never with such raw honesty. "You don't," he answered truthfully, "just like I don't know if I can trust you." He glanced at the twins, who were watching the exchange with wide, sleepy eyes. "But sometimes we have to trust someone." To his astonishment, Chloe turned to her brother. "What do you think?" she asked. Owen lowered the flashlight and sized Ethan up with a comically serious expression. "He looks like a prince," he declared, which made Ava giggle for the first time. A small smile, the first Ethan had seen, touched Chloe's lips. "What's your name?" "Jack," he said, then corrected himself. "Ethan Sterling." "Okay, Mr. Jack, Mr. Ethan," she said, the formal, grown-up tone in her small voice making his heart ache. "We'll trust you." As he helped Chloe pack their meager belongings, all of which fit into 2 small backpacks, Ethan wondered at what point his meticulously planned life had gone completely off the rails. He had a crucial presentation to finalize, a deal that would shape the future of Sterling Dynamics. His legal team would have a collective aneurysm when they found out what he was doing. His sleek penthouse, a sanctuary of smart technology and minimalist design, was the opposite of child-friendly. But when Ava, sleepy and trusting, lifted her arms for him to carry her to the truck, Ethan knew there was no turning back. Chloe expertly arranged the Rivian's back seat, buckling in Owen, who was already clutching the worn teddy bear. "Seatbelt," Ethan reminded her gently. "I know," she replied, already snapping the buckles into place. "Mom always said safety first." Ethan started the truck, the electric motors silent in the scorching heat. On the dash, the navigation system blinked to life as if nothing had ever been wrong. The route to his apartment glowed clearly on the screen. "Chloe?" Yes, Mr. Jack? Mr. Ethan? Thank you for trusting me. In the rearview mirror, he saw that small smile return. Thank you for helping us. The sun bled across the horizon as the Rivian pulled away from the abandoned station. In the back, Owen was fast asleep, Teddy Bear held tight. Ava was fighting a losing battle with her eyelids. Chloe remained awake, her green eyes meeting Ethan's in the mirror from time to time. Ethan Sterling, the man known as the architect of Silicon Valley, felt a fundamental part of his own internal architecture begin to crumble. His penthouse would never be the same. His life would never be the same. And for the first time in a decade, he was completely at peace with a decision that had no algorithm, no data, and no predictable outcome. The future was a terrifying unknown, but something told him that these 3 children, found in a gas station bathroom on a blistering California day, were exactly the variable his perfectly calculated, painfully empty life had been missing. The private elevator at Sterling Tower opened directly into the penthouse foyer. Ethan keyed in the security code with one hand, a sleeping Ava draped over his other shoulder. Chloe followed him in, holding a drowsy Owen by the hand. "Wow," the girl whispered, her green eyes scanning the vast minimalist space. The apartment was a monument to modern design, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a glittering panoramic view of the San Francisco Bay, now studded with the first lights of evening. The decor, a symphony of charcoal grays and stark whites, was punctuated by massive abstract art pieces. Every object had a purpose, a designated spot. "The bedrooms are this way," Ethan indicated, leading them down a long hallway illuminated by recessed lighting. Chloe trailed behind, her small steps silent on the polished concrete floors. He could feel her taking in every detail: the stark Ansel Adams-style black-and-white photographs, the complex sculptures in their niches, the seamless glass panel that controlled everything from temperature to ambient sound. "This can be your room," he said, opening a door. "It has its own bathroom and—" "There are 2 beds?" Owen exclaimed, suddenly wide awake and making a beeline for the bed by the window. The guest suite, like the rest of the penthouse, was impeccably styled with 2 queen beds dressed in crisp white linens, a designer Eames lounge chair, and automated blackout shades controlled by a bedside tablet. "Chloe can stay in the room next door," Ethan suggested, carefully laying Ava on one of the beds. "It's smaller, but—" "I'd rather stay with them," the girl replied instantly, already removing her brother's dusty sneakers. They don't sleep well alone." Ethan nodded, watching her small, efficient hands tuck Owen into the other bed. "I'll get you clean towels and—" "Mr. Ethan," Chloe interrupted softly, so as not to wake Ava. Is there a way to leave a light on? Owen doesn't like the dark." The way she asked, as if it were an enormous favor, made Ethan's heart clench. "Of course," he replied, tapping the control panel to bring up a soft, warm glow. "You can control it here, see? Brighter, dimmer." Chloe watched his demonstration intently, her eyes bright with fascination at the technology. By the time he was done, she'd already committed the sequence to memory. "Thank you, Mr. Ethan," she said formally. Then, after a pause, "You have a really beautiful home." Ethan managed a slight smile. "Apartment?" he corrected automatically. "And thank you. Now try to get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." Leaving the room, Ethan left the door slightly ajar. Through the gap, he saw Chloe check on her siblings one last time before curling up on the floor between their 2 beds, still fully clothed. In his home office, Ethan dragged a hand over his face, feeling the rough beginnings of a beard. His reflection in the dark window showed a man who looked like he'd aged a decade in a few hours. His expensive dress shirt was wrinkled and sported a small drool stain where Ava had slept. He picked up his phone, now showing a full 5G signal, and dialed a number he never imagined he'd need. "Bay Area Elite Childcare, good evening." Good evening. I need someone with experience to start tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" The operator sounded taken aback. "Sir, we usually require interviews and—" "I'll pay double the normal fee," Ethan cut in. "I need someone experienced with small children, 2-year-old twins and a 6-year-old. There was a brief silence on the other end. "I have a professional who could start tomorrow. Emily Carter, 15 years of experience, specializing in young children." "Perfect. Send me the details by email." After finalizing the arrangements, Ethan sank into his ergonomic Herman Miller chair. The silence of the apartment, once a source of comfort and focus, now felt vast and unnervingly hollow. Morning arrived with sounds his penthouse had never before contained. "Owen, no, Mr. Ethan won't like it if you—" The sound of something heavy crashing to the floor made Ethan's eyes snap open. For a second, he was disoriented in his own bedroom. Then the previous day's events came rushing back. He threw a silk robe over his pajamas and followed the noise to the living area. The scene that greeted him made his heart skip a beat. Owen stood in the center of his meticulously curated living room, surrounded by a mountain of down-filled accent pillows that had once been artfully arranged on his Italian sofa. Ava, delighted by her brother's architectural masterpiece, clapped her hands and shrieked with laughter. Chloe was frantically trying to gather the pillows, her face turning pale as she spotted Ethan. Sorry, Mr. Ethan," she stammered. "I tried to stop him, but—" "Look, Mr. Ethan!" Owen called out happily, heaving another pillow into the pile. "It's a fort!" Ethan opened his mouth to reprimand them, to restore order, but something about Ava's unrestrained, joyous laughter, the first he'd ever heard from her, made him hesitate. The designer pillows, each worth more than most people's rent, now formed a chaotic fortress in his immaculate living room. The chime of the elevator saved him from having to respond. Emily Carter was exactly as advertised. In her early 40s, with kind eyes and elegantly graying hair, she radiated a calm competence that was immediately reassuring. "Mr. Sterling," she greeted him professionally, her experienced gaze already taking in the living room situation without a hint of judgment. "I see we have a fort under construction." To Ethan's surprise, Chloe visibly relaxed at Emily's arrival. Perhaps it was the maternal warmth in her voice or the way she immediately knelt down to the twins' level. "What an impressive fort," Emily commented, making Owen beam with pride. "But how about we build an even bigger one after breakfast?" The day passed in a blur of activity that Ethan observed from the glass walls of his office. Emily quickly established a routine. Breakfast, his chef's kitchen finally seeing real action, educational games, lunch, and a nap for the twins. But even Emily's expertise couldn't fully contain the vibrant chaos of 3 children. Ethan found tiny fingerprints on his glass panels, a crayon drawing on a stack of important legal documents, and the toys Emily had brought scattered in the most improbable places. "Mr. Ethan?" Chloe's voice startled him late that afternoon. "Who are the people in these photos?" She was pointing to the black and white portraits lining the hallway, his personal collection of urban photography. "They're people in New York," he replied, realizing for the first time how alien these images must seem to a child. Somber, anonymous faces captured in moments of profound isolation. "They look sad," Chloe observed, tilting her head. Ethan had never considered it. The photos were celebrated by critics for their deep urban melancholy. "Why don't you have any happy pictures?" she asked with unnerving innocence. The question blindsided him. Why, indeed? His apartment, which he'd always viewed as the pinnacle of sophisticated taste, suddenly felt cold and sterile through Chloe's eyes. Night brought new challenges. Even with Emily gone for the evening, promising an early return, the soundscape of the apartment was fundamentally altered. The patter of small feet, muffled giggles, the occasional cry quickly shushed. Ethan was in his bedroom reviewing market projections on his tablet when he heard it, a soft, melodic humming. "Over the rainbow, way up high. Following the sound, he found the children's door cracked open. Chloe was sitting on the floor between the twins' beds, humming softly. Ava clutched her stuffed bunny, her eyes heavy with sleep. Owen was already asleep, one of his new toy cars held tight in his hand. "There's a land that I heard of, once in a lullaby." Chloe's voice was sweet and slightly off-key, but it was filled with so much love that Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. He stood there for a moment, unseen in the dim hallway, a silent observer of this small, sacred act of family. His multi-million-dollar penthouse, with its breathtaking views and museum-quality art, had never held anything as precious as that simple lullaby. Back in his room, Ethan couldn't focus on his work. The apartment sounded different. Where there had once been silence, there was life. Where there had been perfect order, there was a beautiful chaos. Where there had been solitude masquerading as sophistication, there was... A sudden cry from the children's room interrupted his thoughts. Before he could move, he heard Chloe's light footsteps and her gentle, calming voice. His penthouse would never be the same, he thought, and for the first time, that didn't feel like a bad thing. Lying in his king-sized bed, surrounded by every luxury money could buy, Ethan Sterling realized that his perfectly organized space had been, all this time, perfectly empty. The fingerprints on the glass, the scattered toys, the laughter and the tears, they were the signs of life, of humanity, of warmth. His penthouse was finally becoming a home, and he, the architect of Silicon Valley, was slowly, piece by piece, being deconstructed and rebuilt. Ethan woke to his alarm at 5:30 a.m., as always. For a brief moment in the pre-dawn stillness, everything felt normal. Then he heard it, muffled laughter coming from the kitchen. He slipped on his silk robe and followed the sound. In the kitchen, he found Emily already preparing breakfast, while Chloe helped the twins into their high chairs. "Good morning, Mr. Ethan," Owen called out, cheerfully smearing yogurt on the Italian marble island. "Sorry about the noise," Emily said, efficiently wiping up the spill. "Someone here woke up with a lot of energy today." Ethan nodded absently, his gaze fixed on his once sacred morning space, now a war zone of spilled milk and cereal. His morning routine had always been a precise, solitary ritual: 30 minutes on his Peloton, a double espresso from his imported machine, the Wall Street Journal on his custom-built tablet. "Mr. Ethan, want some Fruit Loops?" Chloe offered politely, holding up a brightly colored box that had definitely not been in his pantry yesterday. "No, thank you, They're really good," she insisted, her green eyes earnest. "Mom said even grown-ups need colors at breakfast." The casual mention of her mother made Ethan pause. Against all his better judgment, he held out his stark, minimalist porcelain bowl. "Just a little." Chloe's beaming smile was worth every disruption to his impeccable routine. By 8:45 a.m., Ethan was in his office, adjusting his Tom Ford tie in the reflection of his monitor. The video conference with investors in Singapore was set to begin in 15 minutes. Outside, he could hear Emily organizing an art project. "Let's make a really nice drawing for Mr. Ethan," he heard the nanny suggest, but very quietly, because he has an important meeting. Ethan smiled faintly, appreciating Emily's skill. In just 2 days, she had transformed the initial chaos into a semblance of manageable order, almost manageable. The monitor lit up at 9 a.m. sharp. The serious faces of the Singaporean executives filled the high-definition screen. "Good morning, everyone," Ethan greeted, maintaining a perfect, confident posture. "Thank you all for joining." So that's when he heard it, the unmistakable thud of small feet racing down the hallway. "Owen, no!" Emily's hushed voice followed. Ethan kept his professional smile fixed, continuing his presentation. Sterling Dynamics was launching a new line of augmented reality hardware, and the projected numbers were staggering. The doorknob to his office began to turn, slowly. As you can see on the chart, Ethan pressed on, his own heart rate accelerating. Our projection for the third quarter. Mr. Ethan! Owen burst into the office like a tiny hurricane, clutching a colorful crayon drawing. In his haste to show off his masterpiece, he stumbled into the pedestal that held a Dale Chihuly-inspired glass sculpture, a one-of-a-kind piece commissioned for his office. The world seemed to shift into slow motion. Ethan saw the sculpture teeter, catching the morning light in a final, brilliant flash before its inevitable descent. He saw Emily at the door, her face a mask of horror. He saw the shocked expressions of the executives on his screen. The sound of shattering glass was explosive. "My apologies," he began to say to the investors, but then his eyes found Owen, standing amidst the glittering shards. The boy's wide eyes were fixed on Ethan, his lower lip beginning to tremble as enormous tears welled up. The drawing, Ethan could see it clearly now, depicted 5 stick figures, 3 small ones, 1 tall one in a suit, presumably him, and another who must be Emily. I just wanted to show our family," Owen sobbed. Family. The word struck Ethan like a physical blow. Here he was, on the verge of closing a multi-billion-dollar deal, and all this little boy wanted was to show him a drawing of our family. And then, to everyone's astonishment, including his own, Ethan Sterling began to laugh. Not a polite corporate chuckle, but a genuine, deep-bellied laugh that echoed in the silent, sterile office. "Daijobu desu," he told the stunned investors, still smiling. "Sometimes art needs to be reinvented." Emily had already rushed in, scooping Owen up and carefully avoiding the glass. But before she could leave, Ethan held up a hand. "Gentlemen," he addressed the executives, "my apologies for the interruption. This is Owen, our newest art consultant." To his amazement, he saw a few smiles crack the serious facades on the screen. The eldest executive even gave the boy a little wave. "Kawaii desu ne," another remarked, and Ethan could have sworn he saw a child's photo on the corner of one of their desks. The meeting continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. The tension had been, quite literally, shattered along with the sculpture. Ethan found himself gesturing more, smiling more. When he spoke of the family potential of the new devices, he wasn't just reciting marketing points. Emily stood in the doorway, Owen still in her arms, a thoughtful look on her face. In her 15 years of working for the ultra-wealthy, she had never witnessed such a subtle yet seismic transformation. After the call concluded, with the investors more enthusiastic than ever, Ethan rose and walked over to Owen. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ethan," the boy mumbled, still sniffling. "I didn't mean to break—" "Hey," Ethan interrupted gently, taking the crumpled drawing from his small hand. "How about we hang this up right here?" He pointed to the wall where an expensive abstract painting had once hung. "I think it'll look better than the sculpture." Owen's smile lit up the room. That night, after Emily had left and the children were asleep, Ethan stood in his office, staring at the drawing now taped to the wall. The stick figures all had enormous smiles, with red hearts floating around them. His phone rang. It was David Miller, his CFO. "Ethan, the Singapore group just sent the contract. They've increased the investment by 30%. What on earth did you do in that meeting?" Ethan smiled, his eyes still on the drawing. "Let's just say I had a little help from a specialized consultant." "Consultant? Which consultant, David?" "David, there's something I need to tell you." As he began to explain the situation to his stunned CFO, Ethan realized that his two worlds, the ruthlessly corporate and the newly discovered domestic, might not be so separate after all. The glass sculpture had been unique, irreplaceable. But in its place was something far more valuable, a messy crayon drawing of a makeshift family, brimming with love. And for the first time in his career, Ethan Sterling, the algorithm of Silicon Valley, realized that the best business decisions don't come from spreadsheets or projections, but from the heart, even one that was just beginning to thaw. After the sculpture incident, a subtle but profound change began to ripple through the penthouse. It wasn't a complete renovation. The space retained its minimalist elegance, the surfaces still gleamed, and the smart home systems operated with flawless precision. It was the small, humanizing details that Ethan began to notice. One morning, while pacing the hallway on a conference call about market projections, he stopped short. Chloe was in the laundry room with Emily, her small hands expertly folding a stack of tiny T-shirts. The focused furrow of her brow reminded him of himself reviewing a contract, and he almost smiled. "Like this, Emily?" she asked, holding up a perfectly folded shirt. "Perfect, sweetie," the nanny replied, and Ethan saw the pride light up the girl's eyes. "Mr. Sterling, are you there?" The voice on his phone jolted him back. "Yes, go on," he replied, but his gaze lingered a moment longer on the quiet domestic scene. The next day, during a call with the West Coast Division, he noticed another pattern. Every time he walked past the living room, Owen would stop whatever he was doing, a huge grin spreading across his face, and wave frantically. It didn't matter if Ethan was deep in a discussion about algorithmic efficiency or market share. The boy's pure, unadulterated delight at seeing him was a constant. At first, Ethan would just give a distracted nod. But somewhere along the line, he couldn't say precisely when, he started waving back, a small, discreet wave, a subtle wink during less critical calls. Ava, however, began the most insidious invasion of all. It started with a purple scribble slipped under his office door. He found it during a break, a series of crooked lines that might have been a cat or perhaps a cloud. His first instinct was to toss it, to maintain the pristine state of his workspace. But something made him hesitate. The next day, another drawing appeared, this time a series of bright circles that Ava proudly identified as family when he saw her in the hallway. "This is you, Mr. Ethan," she said, pointing to a large blue circle. "Blue because you wear a lot of blue suits." Ethan tucked the drawing into his desk drawer. Soon it became a collection. Drawings appeared daily, each one more vibrant than the last. Ethan bought a special leather-bound folder to keep them, hidden away between financial reports and strategic plans. Mealtimes, previously a solitary and purely functional event, became a fascinating study in family dynamics. Ethan started taking his dinner at the kitchen island with the children, watching their interactions over the top of his tablet. "I don't want broxy," Owen declared one evening, pushing the green vegetable to the far edge of his plate. "But you have to eat it," Chloe reasoned patiently. "Look, do it like this." She chopped her own broccoli into minuscule pieces, mixing them into her mashed potatoes. "See? Now it's a magic forest covered in snow." Ethan watched, fascinated, as Owen considered his sister's strategy before meticulously copying it. "Mr. Ethan is eating broccoli, too," Ava pointed out, making everyone look at his own, practically untouched plate. Caught, Ethan found himself employing Chloe's magic forest method, much to the twins' delight. The children's laughter was another new element, a sound he was still learning to decode. They would burst into giggles over things that made no logical sense to him, a mispronounced word, a funny face, an inside joke that seemed hilarious only to them. "What's so funny?" he found himself asking one night after a particularly intense bout of laughter. "It's just," Chloe tried to explain, catching her breath. "Owen said the moon looks like cheese, and Ava said then the stars must be crumbs." The explanation was nonsensical, but Ethan found himself smiling anyway. One afternoon, arriving home early from a canceled meeting, he found Emily setting up an impromptu picnic on the balcony. The children were sitting on a checkered blanket. Where had she even found that? Eating star-shaped sandwiches. "Mr. Ethan," Owen called, "come sit with us." His first instinct was to decline. He had emails to answer, reports to review. But the late afternoon sun was warm, and Chloe's hopeful smile was hard to resist. "Just for 5 minutes," he relented, sitting awkwardly on the blanket. 5 minutes stretched into an hour. Ethan discovered that star-shaped sandwiches did, in fact, taste different, that the clouds over the bay could look like dragons or pirate ships if you squinted just right, and that the sound of children's laughter blended perfectly with the gentle breeze. That night, tidying his office, Ethan found another of Ava's drawings. This time, the family of colorful circles was having a picnic. The big blue circle, him, was smiling. As he placed the picture in its special folder, Ethan realized something was fundamentally shifting inside him. The part of his brain that always prioritized data over people, profit over laughter, was slowly ceding territory. In his closet, nestled amongst rows of perfectly aligned Italian suits, now hung a tie with little rocket ships on it, a gift from Owen on an outing with Emily. In his sleek, minimalist bathroom, rubber ducks sat alongside his expensive toiletries. His briefcase now carried, in addition to multi-million-dollar contracts, a carefully preserved collection of colorful drawings. Ethan Sterling, the man who built an empire on cold logic and calculated risk, was learning a new language, one made of morning smiles, broccoli magic forests, and star-shaped sandwiches. It was a language, he realized, his heart had always known, but had long forgotten how to speak. And with every small moment, every saved drawing, every returned wave, every shared laugh, that language became more fluent, more necessary, like a frequency his heart had forgotten how to tune into, now coming in loud and clear. The sky over San Francisco darkened with alarming speed, a thick marine layer rolling in and turning the afternoon into a premature twilight. From his penthouse office, Ethan watched the fog devour the Golden Gate Bridge while finishing a video conference. And with these projections, gentlemen, a particularly strong gust of wind rattled the apartment's massive windows, interrupting him. Emily had left early, worried about the drive home in the storm. Ethan had assured her he could handle it. His apartment, after all, had state-of-the-art backup systems. What could possibly go wrong? "Mr. Ethan," Chloe's voice came from his office doorway. "I think it's going to storm hard." "I'm almost done here," he replied, noticing she was nervously twisting the hem of her shirt. "Everything okay?" Before she could answer, the wind howled again, and the lights flickered twice. "Gentlemen, I think we need to wrap this up," Ethan said quickly to the executives on screen. "We'll continue tomorrow." He had barely disconnected the call when the power grid for the entire neighborhood failed. For a few heart-stopping seconds, the world was plunged into absolute blackness. Then, as designed, the apartment's emergency generator kicked in, bathing the rooms in a soft, low light. "See?" Ethan smiled at Chloe, who was still frozen in the doorway. "We have backups for everything here." That's when the backup systems failed. The darkness that followed was total and profound. The huge windows, which provided so much light by day, now only reflected the distant, silent flashes of lightning. "Ethan!" The shout came from the twins' room. It was the first time they'd called him without "Mr." he registered, as he felt his way through the pitch-black hallway. He found Owen and Ava huddled in the middle of their bedroom, clinging to each other. Rain now lashed against the windows, the wind whistling through unseen cracks, creating monstrous dancing shadows on the walls. "Hey, it's all right," he tried to reassure them, his voice sounding unnaturally loud in the oppressive dark. "It's just a storm." A deafening gust of wind shook the entire building, and suddenly he had two small children wrapped around his legs. "Mr. Ethan," Ava sobbed, "I'm scared." For a moment, Ethan Sterling, CEO to hundreds, was utterly lost on how to comfort one frightened child. Let's all go to my room," he suggested, remembering some unopened scented candles in his master suite. Carrying Ava and guiding Owen by the hand, with Chloe trailing close behind, Ethan led his small, terrified convoy through the dark. His room offered a partial view of the city, where lightning flashes provided sporadic, eerie illumination. "Here," he said, his hands finally closing around the smooth wax of the candles. He lit 3, creating a small, flickering circle of golden light. The twins were still trembling, now huddled in the center of his king-sized bed. Chloe sat beside them, trying to be brave, but Ethan could see the fear in her eyes. "You know," he began, the idea forming as he spoke, "this reminds me of a story." 3 pairs of eyes turned to him in the dim glow. "What story?" Owen asked, his small voice shaky. Ethan swallowed. There was no story, but those trusting eyes were expecting one, expecting him to make it all okay. "The story of the brave little bear," he improvised, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Have you heard it?" The children shook their heads. "No." "Well," Ethan continued, his mind racing, "once upon a time, there was a little bear who lived in a magic forest. He had a really nice house full of technology, just like ours." "Did the bear have a tablet?" Ava asked, already a little less scared. Yes," Ethan smiled. "And he also had an automatic light system, like ours." "What happened then?" Chloe scooted closer, intrigued. "One day, a huge storm hit the forest," Ethan went on, as a flash of lightning punctuated his story perfectly. "All the lights went out, all the systems failed." "Just like now," Owen interrupted, clutching his own teddy bear. "Exactly like now, but do you know what the little bear discovered?" The children leaned forward, waiting. "He discovered he didn't need automatic lights or tablets to feel safe, because he had something way more important." "What?" 3 voices asked in unison. "He had friends," Ethan answered softly. "A very clever squirrel," he smiled at Chloe, "and 2 bunny twins who always stuck together." "Like us!" Ava exclaimed. "And what did they do during the storm?" Chloe asked, getting into the spirit of it. "Well," Ethan hesitated. "They built a blanket fort," Chloe suggested, "with covers, like Emily taught us." "Yeah," Owen agreed, perking up, "and the bear could tell them stories." Before Ethan knew it, the children were in motion. Chloe, with impressive efficiency, began arranging his imported Italian pillows in a circle. Ava brought her stuffed bunny to join the adventure, while Owen held his teddy. "And so," Ethan continued, watching in amazement as his perfectly ordered bedroom transformed into an impromptu campsite draped in Egyptian cotton sheets, "the little bear discovered that sometimes the best things happen when all the systems fail." "Like now?" Chloe asked quietly, her green eyes shining in the candlelight. "Like now," Ethan confirmed, surprised by how true the words felt. The storm raged outside, but inside the makeshift fort, a different world was taking shape. Chloe added details to the story. The squirrel was an expert fort builder. The twins provided sound effects for the wind, turning fear into a game. And Ethan discovered that stories spun from thin air could be far more meaningful than any quarterly report. At some point between the 3rd and 4th installment of the Bear's adventures, with everyone now contributing to the plot, Ethan realized something fundamental had changed. Ava had fallen asleep in his lap, her small body completely relaxed, trusting him implicitly for her safety. Owen fought sleep, determined to know if the bear had a waterproof tablet. Chloe, leaning against his side, occasionally corrected his narrative. "No, Mr. Ethan, squirrels don't eat pizza." The storm still howled, but inside that fort, Ethan Sterling, the architect of Silicon Valley, was experiencing a new kind of connection. It wasn't the cold, transactional need of business, where he was valued for his strategic mind. It was a deeper, more elemental need. Here, in the dark, 3 small hearts needed him, not for his money or his power, but for his presence, for his silly stories, for the simple safety of his arms. When they all finally drifted off to sleep, huddled together on his designer bed, Ethan remained awake for a long time, watching their faces in the flickering candlelight. His high-tech apartment had failed. Every backup, every piece of cutting-edge automation had gone dark. And yet, it had been a perfect night. Because sometimes he was beginning to learn the most profound connections are made precisely when all systems fail, when there is nothing left but darkness, improvised stories, and hearts beating together. Outside, the storm was finally passing, but inside Ethan's chest, something new and powerful was just beginning to stir. The Rimowa suitcase lay open on Ethan's bed, a silent testament to his impending trip. In his closet, 3 immaculate suits hung ready for his presentation in Silicon Valley, a crucial pitch to venture capitalists that could double Sterling Dynamics' valuation. "Mr. Ethan," Emily Carter's voice came from the doorway. "I think we need to talk." Something in her tone made him look up from his tablet. "It's Chloe," Emily continued, her expression etched with worry. "She's not well. She's had a fever since lunchtime." Ethan frowned. "Did you give her any medicine?" "Yes, but it's not coming down, and she barely touched her dinner." "I'm sure you can handle this, Emily," Ethan replied, his attention already drifting back to his tablet. "My flight leaves early tomorrow, and this presentation—" "Mr. Sterling," Emily interrupted, her voice firm but respectful. "I really think you need to see her." Her insistence finally broke through his focus. With a sigh, Ethan rose and followed her to the children's room. Chloe was curled up in bed, her cheeks flushed, her breathing shallow. The twins were playing quietly on the floor, casting anxious glances at their sister. "Hey," Ethan said softly, sitting on the edge of her bed. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine," Chloe answered, though her voice was weak. "You're leaving tomorrow, right?" I heard Emily say. Typical Chloe, Ethan thought, worrying about his schedule even when she was sick. "It's just a meeting," he lied, surprised at himself. It was far more than a meeting. It was the biggest deal of his career. "Emily will take good care of us," Chloe assured him, her fever-bright eyes struggling to focus. "Don't worry about me." Ethan felt a painful twist in his gut at her words. A 6-year-old girl trying not to be a burden. Get some rest was all he could manage before retreating to his room. The night crawled by. Ethan tried to review his presentation, but his mind kept drifting back to the children's room. Emily had left reluctantly after he insisted he had everything under control. Around 2 a.m., a sound woke him. "Mommy! Mommy!" Ethan was out of bed in an instant, following the pained cries. He found Chloe thrashing in her bed, her face slick with sweat. "Chloe," he said, touching her forehead. She was burning up. "Mom!" "It hurts," she mumbled, her eyes half open but unseeing. A crack formed in the carefully constructed wall around Ethan's heart. "Shh, it's going to be okay," he whispered, scooping her into his arms. Her small body was terrifyingly hot. He carried her into the ensuite bathroom and turned on the shower, not bothering to adjust the temperature. Fully clothed, he stepped under the lukewarm spray with her in his arms. "Mom used to sing," Chloe mumbled deliriously, "when I got sick." The crack inside Ethan widened. Memories he had buried for years flooded back, his own mother humming to him during childhood fevers, his stoic father crying silently in a hospital hallway when she got sick for the last time. "Please," he whispered, not knowing who he was talking to. "Please let her be okay." The twins appeared in the bathroom doorway, their small faces pale with alarm. "Mr. Ethan?" Owen asked, his voice a tiny thread. "Is Chloe going to be all right?" It was the final straw. Something inside Ethan Sterling, something he had been building brick by brick since his parents died, simply shattered. The tears came first, silent and hot, mingling with the shower water. Then they became ragged sobs that shook his entire body. "I'm sorry," he murmured against Chloe's wet hair. "I'm so sorry for almost leaving." To his surprise, he felt small arms wrap around his legs. The twins, still in their pajamas, had stepped into the shower with them. "Don't cry, Mr. Ethan," Ava pleaded, her own voice trembling. Yeah, Owen added. Chloe's strong, just like you. Ethan slid down to the shower floor, still cradling Chloe, the twins clinging to him, all of them soaked and shivering. It was there, sitting on the cold Italian marble, fully dressed and drenched, with 3 children holding on to him, that Ethan Sterling finally understood. He understood why he'd kept everyone at arm's length since he was orphaned. He understood why he'd buried himself in code and algorithms, building an impenetrable fortress of success around his heart. And he understood, with searing clarity, that the fortress had just been leveled. With a shaking hand, he pulled his waterlogged phone from his pocket. Amanda, sorry for the late call. Cancel my trip to Silicon Valley. Yes, all the meetings. No, it can't be rescheduled for tomorrow. I don't know when it can be rescheduled. And Amanda, I need the number for the best children's hospital in the area. Now. Hanging up, Ethan looked at the 3 children. Chloe's fever was still raging, but her breathing seemed a little calmer. The twins, wet and shivering, held on tight. Let's get dried off, he said softly. And then we're going on a little trip. Where to? Ava asked as he wrapped them in the fluffiest towels he owned. Somewhere they'll take care of Chloe, he replied, already grabbing dry clothes for them. And I'm staying with you the whole time. Promise? Owen asked, his big eyes locked on Ethan's. I promise. It was a promise that echoed far beyond that night, Ethan knew. A promise to never again build walls. A promise to never again pretend that quarterly earnings mattered more than a hug, that contracts outweighed a child's comfort. As he dressed Chloe, who was now trembling with chills, Ethan thought of all the moments from the past weeks. Ava's drawings in his drawer, the improvised stories in the storm, Owen's proud waves, Chloe's wise questions. They weren't just children he'd found at a gas station. They were a second chance, a chance to feel, to love, to be human. Mr. Ethan, Chloe murmured, her feverish eyes finding his. Stay with me. Always, he replied, his voice thick with emotion. I'll always stay with you. And so, in the pre-dawn silence, Ethan Sterling, the man who had built an empire by avoiding emotional connection, discovered that some things were worth more than all the success in the world. His armor was finally broken, and in its place, a long-dormant heart began to beat again, stronger and more honestly than ever before. The Children's Hospital of Los Angeles was an imposing structure of glass and steel, but to Ethan, it felt like an impenetrable fortress he had to conquer. He carried Chloe through the emergency room doors, the twins trailing behind, each holding one of Emily Carter's hands. She had met them at the entrance after Ethan's frantic call. Pneumonia, the doctor diagnosed after a battery of tests. Quite severe. We'll need to admit her. Ethan watched through the glass of the private room as the medical team settled Chloe in. Her small face was partially hidden by an oxygen mask, and a symphony of monitors beeped around her. Mr. Ethan, Ava tugged at his still damp pant leg, is Chloe going to be okay? He crouched down, scooping the little girl into his arms. Yes, sweetie, the doctors here are the best. How do you know? Owen asked, his big eyes filled with a pragmatist's worry. Because I checked on my tablet, Ethan replied automatically, then realized it was true. Somewhere between the shower and the drive, he had researched hospital rankings, patient reviews, and case histories. His business instincts now deployed for a purpose far more critical than any corporate deal. The first 24 hours were a tense vigil. Chloe's fever stubbornly resisted the medication, and her breathing remained labored. Ethan barely left her side. Mr. Ethan, Chloe asked weakly on the second night, her voice muffled by the mask. Tell me a story. Which one do you want to hear? The bear one? The storm one? Ethan smiled, taking her small hand in his. The brave bear. Well, he got sick once too. And so began a new chapter in the saga, where the bear had to be strong during his stay in the forest hospital, cared for by a wise owl doctor and a very kind squirrel nurse. On the third day, Chloe turned a corner. Her fever finally broke, and the doctors began to wean her off the oxygen. Ethan was mid-story, describing how the bunny twins visited the bear in the hospital, when a knock on the door interrupted them. "Mr. Sterling, I'm Lisa Martin, the hospital social worker. Can we talk for a moment?" Ethan felt a cold dread wash over him. Lisa was a middle-aged woman with a kind but no-nonsense expression, holding a clipboard that looked ominously official. "Sure," he replied, kissing Chloe's forehead before following Lisa to a small, sterile meeting room. "Mr. Sterling," she began, her eyes scanning her notes, "I'm a bit concerned about the children's legal situation. We haven't found any record of guardianship or formal custody." Ethan took a deep breath. He knew this moment was inevitable. "It's complicated," he began. As Ethan recounted the story of finding the children at the gas station, he saw Lisa's expression shift from concerned to serious. "Mr. Sterling, I understand your good intentions, but what you did was extremely irregular, with no proper documentation, no legal process." She paused, and her next words landed like a blow. "I'm required to notify Child Protective Services." "No," the word burst out of him, sharper than he intended. "Please, they're safe with me. I have the resources. I can provide everything they need." "It's not about resources, Mr. Sterling. It's about legal procedures. The children must be placed under the state's care until we can locate relatives or find a suitable permanent arrangement." Ethan felt the room spin. The thought of losing them, of his penthouse falling silent again, of no more of Ava's drawings or Owen's waves, was unbearable. "Give me a chance," he pleaded, his voice cracking slightly. "I can start the adoption process right away. I have the best lawyer." "Mr. Sterling?" "Please," he interrupted, a vulnerability in his voice that surprised even him. "Those kids, they're my family now." Lisa studied him for a long, silent moment. "I have to do my job, Mr. Sterling, but—" She hesitated. "I can give you 48 hours before making the official notification. Use that time wisely." Ethan didn't waste a second. In the hospital corridor, he made a rapid series of calls. To Amanda, his personal assistant, ordering her to find the best adoption lawyers in California. To his accountant, requesting a complete portfolio of his financial documentation, and to Emily. "I need your help," he said as soon as she answered. "I need your testimony on how I've been caring for the children." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Emily replied without a moment's hesitation. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. While lawyers drafted an emergency custody petition, Ethan split his time between Chloe's bedside and meetings with his legal team. "Mr. Ethan?" Owen's voice surprised him during one of these meetings. The boy had slipped away from Emily and found the makeshift conference room. "Why did that lady say we're leaving?" Ethan froze. The lawyers exchanged worried glances. "No one's going anywhere," Ethan said firmly, scooping Owen into his arms. "I promise. I want to stay with you," Owen declared, hugging his neck tightly. "You're our daddy now." The words hit Ethan like a thunderbolt. Daddy. It was the first time any of them had used that word, even indirectly. The lawyers glanced at each other again, but this time with a different kind of spark in their eyes. One of them was already scribbling furiously. "That could help," he murmured to Ethan. "The children's expressed wishes carry considerable weight." The next 48 hours were a race against the clock. Ethan barely slept, juggling time with a recovering Chloe and meetings with attorneys. Emily proved to be his greatest asset, giving a detailed, glowing statement about the changes she'd witnessed in both Ethan and the children. "I've never seen such a profound transformation," she told the evaluation team. "In the children, who've blossomed under his care, and in him as well." By the end of Lisa's deadline, Ethan had filed an emergency petition for provisional custody, supported by a mountain of evidence: his financial stability, the suitability of his home, professional testimonials, and even security footage from his building showing his devotion to the kids. "Mr. Sterling," Lisa called him after reviewing the file, "this is impressive. Impressive, but we still have to follow proper procedures." "I understand," Ethan interrupted gently. "And I'll do whatever it takes. Fill out every form, do every interview, because those children deserve a home, and he swallowed hard, I need them as much as they need me." Lisa studied him for a long time before nodding. "I'll recommend that the children remain in your care during the evaluation process, but," she added firmly, "we'll be monitoring closely." That night, after the lawyers had finally departed and the twins were asleep on a pull-out couch in Chloe's hospital room, Ethan allowed himself to breathe. "Mr. Ethan?" Chloe called out drowsily. "Yes? Are you really going to be our dad?" Ethan felt tears well in his eyes. "If you want me to," he replied softly. "I do," she whispered. But can I still remember my mom too?" His heart twisted. "Of course you can," he said, his voice thick. "Always. And you know what? I'd love to hear stories about her." Chloe smiled, her eyes heavy with sleep. "She would have liked you, because you tell stories just like her." As Chloe finally drifted off, Ethan watched the 3 sleeping children. In a matter of days, his world had been turned upside down yet again. But this time, instead of building higher walls, he was fighting to tear them all down. Because some battles, he finally understood, were worth any price. And this one, the battle for his new family, was the most important battle of all. Ethan propped his laptop on the small hospital overbed table, angling it carefully to hide the colorful crayon drawings taped to the wall behind him. In 5 minutes, he had a video conference with the Sterling Dynamics board, his first since abruptly canceling his Silicon Valley trip. Chloe was sleeping peacefully, still on some respiratory support, but worlds better than before. The twins were with Emily at the hospital's playroom, giving Ethan a rare pocket of quiet. The screen lit up with the stern faces of his board members. David Miller, his CFO, spoke first. "Ethan, we need to discuss your recent priorities." Ethan took a deep breath. He'd known this was coming. "Canceling the Sand Hill Road meeting was just the beginning," another board member chimed in. "Our investors are concerned about your absence from the company." "Absence?" Ethan repeated, his voice calm but firm. "I've been present at all major meetings remotely. The last quarter's figures." "It's not about figures, Ethan," David cut him off. "It's about commitment, dedication. The Ethan Sterling we know would never have walked away from a critical meeting for personal issues." A heart monitor beeped softly in the background. Ethan glanced at Chloe's sleeping form before meeting their gazes on the screen. "You're right," he said, surprising them. "I've changed, and do you know why? Because that little girl over there," he tilted the laptop slightly to show Chloe, "has taught me more about leadership in a few weeks than I learned in years at Stanford." "Ethan," David tried to interrupt. "No, hear me out. Have you seen a 6-year-old take care of 2 younger siblings on her own? I have. You want to know what real responsibility looks like? It's when people literally depend on you to survive. Not shareholders, not investors. Children." A stunned silence filled the virtual room. "And you know what I realized?" Ethan continued. "Our employees are parents too. Moms, dads, people with families who depend on them, and what do we offer them? Endless work hours, an unrealistic expectation of total devotion." "This is the tech industry, Ethan," another board member argued. "It's always been like this." "What if it could be different?" Ethan leaned closer to the camera. "What if we could be pioneers not just in technology, but in humanity?" He pulled up some files on his tablet. "I have a complete plan here to transform Sterling Dynamics. On-site childcare with qualified professionals, Extended parental leave, not just for mothers, but for fathers too. Flexible hours for parents. Real family benefits. That would cost a fortune, David protested, and make us the most sought-after company in Silicon Valley, Ethan countered. Imagine the best talent choosing Sterling Dynamics not just for the stock options, but because they can have a real family life. Brilliant moms and dads currently out of the workforce could return because they finally have a way to balance career and family. He paused, seeing a flicker of thoughtfulness on a few faces. Moreover, he went on, I've already run the numbers. The initial investment is significant, yes, but the drop in turnover, the rise in productivity when people aren't constantly worried about their kids, the gain in loyalty and commitment, the numbers add up. Still, Ethan, David insisted, your own situation, 3 children, all of a sudden, without a proper legal process. The shareholders are worried about your stability. Ethan smiled, a mixture of sadness and resolve. Do you know the last time I cried? He asked, shocking them with the personal question. It was when my parents died. I was 17. After that, I built this persona, the architect, the algorithm, and it worked. We built an empire. He paused, looking at Chloe again. But 3 nights ago, when this little girl was delirious with fever, calling for the mom she lost, I cried again, and I realized something. We're not algorithms. We're humans, and our company should reflect that. The silence that followed was different, less tense, more reflective. Last week, a quiet board member finally spoke up. I missed my daughter's first ballet recital. I was in a meeting that could have been an email. Others began to share similar stories, missed soccer games, forgotten anniversaries, moments sacrificed for meetings that seemed urgent at the time. I'm not saying we turn Sterling Dynamics into a daycare, Ethan clarified. I'm proposing we become leaders of a new business model, one that acknowledges our employees are whole people, with families, with needs beyond work. He pulled up more files. Here are case studies from companies in Europe that have implemented similar policies. The results are impressive. Increased productivity, talent retention, innovation. When people don't have to constantly choose between work and family, they give their best in both. The meeting continued for another hour, a heated but constructive debate about costs, implementation, and cultural impact. But Ethan sensed a gradual shift from skepticism to cautious curiosity. When he finally ended the call, he was drained, but hopeful. He hadn't won the war, but he'd won a crucial battle. Mr. Ethan? Chloe's sleepy voice startled him. Were you talking about work? I was, he smiled, adjusting her blanket. I was talking about how you taught me to be a better leader. Me? She asked, confused. Yes, you. You know, leadership isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about taking care of people, the way you take care of the twins. Chloe seemed to ponder this. Like how you take care of us now? Exactly, Ethan said, a lump forming in his throat. And you know something? I'm going to try to do that in my company, too. Help other families stay together. Like ours. The words warmed his heart. Yes, sweetheart, just like ours. That night, after the twins returned and everyone had settled in, Ethan stayed awake in his makeshift office. But he wasn't reviewing financial models or market reports. He was sketching out a model daycare for Sterling Dynamics, complete with STEM-focused play areas and quiet rooms for napping. He was rewriting HR policies, beginning the process of re-engineering his company's culture from the inside out. Because some transformations, he was learning, start with a high fever and a broken heart, but end up changing the entire world. The penthouse had never seemed so quiet as it did the morning Chloe came home from the hospital. Ethan carried her gently from the car to the elevator, noting how small and fragile she still felt. "Welcome home," he said softly as the elevator doors opened to their floor. Chloe's gasp of surprise echoed in the foyer. Surprise! Emily, the twins, and Amanda, who had become an unexpected and invaluable ally, stood beneath a colorful handmade banner that read, "Welcome home, Chloe." Balloons bobbed around the once austere space, and the rich smell of freshly baked cookies filled the air. "We made cookies," Owen announced proudly. "I mean, Emily made them, but we helped." Ethan placed Chloe gently on the sofa, which was now piled high with bright cushions and a cozy blanket. Ava immediately snuggled in beside her sister, while Owen launched into a detailed tour of all the drawings they had made while she was gone. "Mr. Ethan," Emily said discreetly, "would you like to see what we did with the extra room?" Ethan followed her to what had once been a stark, empty space reserved for his VR setup. When he opened the door, his jaw dropped. The room had been utterly transformed. The gray walls now sported a vibrant mural of a forest filled with friendly animals. A plush, colorful rug covered the cold concrete floor. Low shelves were filled with children's books and educational toys. In one corner, a small table with brightly colored chairs was set up for art projects. "Amanda helped organize everything," Emily explained. "We thought the kids needed a space of their own." Ethan felt his throat tighten. It was perfect. Not the sterile, calculated perfection he used to strive for, but a warm, chaotic, and vibrant perfection. The following days settled into a new normal. Ethan's schedule, once a rigid block of meetings and work sessions, now had to be completely reconfigured to include moments that felt non-negotiable: family breakfast, bedtime reading, and dedicated time to just be present. One morning, as he was prepping for a video conference, he heard soft crying from the bathroom. "Ava?" he called, tapping gently on the door. "You okay?" "My hair is all tangled," she sniffled, "and Chloe still can't help me 'cause she's not all better." Ethan hesitated for only a second before pushing the door open. "Can I try?" Ava eyed his large, clumsy hands with skepticism, but nodded. What followed was a 10-minute YouTube tutorial on his tablet, teaching him the basics of braiding. The end result was lopsided and far from perfect, but Ava's radiant smile made it feel like a monumental achievement. "Now you're a braiding expert," she declared, hugging his legs before running off. The visits from the social workers were still tense. Lisa Martin, in particular, had a knack for arriving at the most chaotic moments, like the afternoon she found Ethan on the living room floor, wearing a plastic princess tiara, a gift from Ava, while trying to assemble a puzzle with the twins. Or when Chloe decided she wanted to learn to bake, and the chef's kitchen looked like it had been hit by a flour bomb. But instead of finding fault, Lisa seemed increasingly impressed. "Mr. Sterling," she remarked during one visit, "you really have transformed this place." Ethan followed her gaze around the penthouse. Where a minimalist sculpture once stood, a giant stuffed giraffe now resided. Children's drawings were taped to the fridge, sharing space with expensive modern art. The Italian designer sofa was covered with a brightly colored throw blanket. "The kids transformed it," he corrected softly. "I just let myself be transformed along with it." In the evenings, after dinner, now always a family affair at the kitchen island, Ethan established a new ritual. Story time began with everyone piling into the new playroom, which they had nicknamed the Enchanted Forest. "Tell the bear story again," Owen would always request. But now the story had evolved. The bear no longer lived alone in his high-tech house. He had a family, a very clever squirrel and 2 mischievous bunny twins, who filled his days with adventure. One night, after tucking the children in, Ethan found Chloe still awake, looking through a photo album Emily had helped her put together. "They're pictures of Mom," she explained when he sat beside her. "Emily helped me organize them." Ethan looked at the photographs of a young, smiling woman with 3 small children. His heart ached. "She was really pretty," he said softly. "Yeah," Chloe agreed. "And you know what? I think she'd be happy to see us now." "Why's that?" "Because she always said family isn't just who you're born with, it's who chooses to stay together." Ethan pulled Chloe into a hug, his own eyes stinging. "Your mom was very wise, just like you." She yawned, smiling. But don't tell Owen I said that. He already thinks you know everything just because you beat that hard level on the video game." Ethan laughed, remembering the hours he'd spent mastering Mario Kart with Owen, his son. How strange and wonderful it was to think that, who had been so proud when he'd finally conquered Rainbow Road. The adoption process moved forward, a slow, grinding machine of paperwork and interviews. Whenever Ethan felt overwhelmed by the bureaucracy, a small moment with the children would renew his resolve. Ava bringing him a new drawing to make your office look happier. Owen insisting on reading a new book to him, even if it interrupted an important call. Or Chloe, with her quiet wisdom, simply sitting beside him while he worked late, offering silent, steadfast support. One morning, Lisa made an unannounced visit and found the apartment in a state of happy chaos. Ethan had attempted to make pancakes, a culinary disaster that had left batter on nearly every surface. The twins were dusted with flour, and Chloe was trying, through fits of laughter, to clean up. Rather than looking disapproving, Lisa smiled. "You know, Mr. Sterling," she said, making a note on her clipboard, "when I first took this case, I was skeptical. A single executive with no child-rearing experience wanting to adopt 3 children at once." Ethan tensed, bracing for the verdict. "But now," she continued, "I see that sometimes the most unlikely families are exactly the ones that belong together." That night, after another session in the Enchanted Forest, with the children finally asleep, Ethan sat in his office. He wasn't working. He was looking at a recent photo on his phone, the 4 of them at a park, all smiling, casually happy. Next to his laptop was a stack of adoption paperwork waiting for his signature. He barely recognized the man in the photo, not because his hair was a mess or because he was wearing a hoodie, but because of his smile, a genuine, unguarded smile that had been absent for nearly half his life and had finally, miraculously, returned. Because sometimes he was learning the family you find is exactly the family you've always needed, and his once lonely, sophisticated penthouse had finally become what it was always meant to be, a home. The email landed during dinner, making Ethan's phone buzz insistently on the kitchen island. A few months ago, he would have snatched it up instantly. Now, however, he was in the middle of a delicate negotiation with Owen over the virtues of broccoli. "But it's green," the boy protested. "Like your favorite superhero's suit," Ethan reasoned, deploying his newly acquired parenting skills. It was only after the kids were in bed, following their nightly storytime tradition, that Ethan finally looked at his phone. The subject line made him sink into his office chair. "Urgent, internal investigation, questionable practices in AI division." As he read the detailed report, a cold knot formed in his stomach. During his extended absence, particularly while he was focused on Chloe's hospitalization, the board had fast-tracked a series of significant changes. The Artificial Intelligence Division, his most ambitious project, had begun employing practices that were ethically dubious at best. "We need to maximize results," read an email from David Miller, his CFO. "With Ethan unavailable, we have to make the tough decisions." The next few hours were a deep dive into a rabbit hole of documents. Sterling Dynamics, the company he had built on a foundation of ethical innovation, was now facing accusations of using user data without proper consent, manipulating algorithms to favor certain clients, and bypassing security protocols in the name of speed and efficiency. "Mr. Ethan?" Chloe's voice startled him. It was nearly midnight, and she was standing in his office doorway in her unicorn pajamas. "Hey, sweetheart, why aren't you asleep?" "I got thirsty," she said, patting closer. "You look sad." Ethan forced a smile. "Work problems," he explained vaguely. "Can I help?" she offered. "Emily says I'm really good at organizing." Before Ethan could gently refuse, Chloe was already picking up stacks of paper from his desk. "Look, we can do it like the twins' toys. All the papers with numbers go together. All the papers with graphs go together." Ethan watched, torn between amusement and exasperation, as years of meticulous organization were systematically dismantled by Chloe's tiny hands. In minutes, his confidential documents were sorted into piles that followed a logic only a 6-year-old could devise. See? Now it's prettier. Ethan was about to explain why corporate documents couldn't be sorted like Lego bricks when something caught his eye. In one of Chloe's piles, 2 seemingly unrelated reports were now side by side, one detailing changes to the data usage policy and another outlining modifications to the security protocols. "Chloe," he asked slowly, "why did you put these 2 together?" "Because they have the same little drawing," she said simply, pointing to a similar flowchart icon on both pages. "Like when Ava copies my drawings." Her innocent observation hit Ethan like a jolt of electricity. Of course, the privacy violations weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a systematic weakening of security protocols, implemented piece by piece to go unnoticed. "Chloe," Ethan smiled, kissing the top of her head, "you're brilliant." "What's brilliant?" "It means someone is really smart and sees things other people don't." Chloe beamed with pride. "Like when I find the toys Owen hides under the bed." "Exactly." After tucking Chloe back into bed, Ethan returned to his office with a renewed sense of purpose. Instead of analyzing the documents in his usual linear fashion, he started looking for patterns, for unexpected connections. Using the colorful sticky notes he'd bought for the kids' art projects, he began mapping the relationships between different departments and decisions, creating a giant, chaotic web on his glass wall. The full picture began to emerge. The board hadn't just made a few bad calls, they had orchestrated a fundamental shift in the company's soul. Sterling Dynamics, born with a mission to make technology more human, was becoming something cold and calculating. At 3 a.m., Ethan went to the kitchen for coffee and saw one of Ava's drawings stuck to the refrigerator. 4 smiling stick figures with hearts floating between them. Staring at that simple image, Ethan had an epiphany. The solution to this crisis wasn't more protocols or purely technical fixes. It was about remembering the company's original purpose, technology made by people, for people. Back in his office, he started writing a new proposal. It wasn't a typical corporate memo. It read more like a story, the kind he told his children at bedtime. It was the story of a company that had lost its way but could find its path again. A story about balancing innovation with integrity, progress with humanity. By the time the sun rose, he had a complete plan. It wasn't about sacrificing efficiency. It was about putting people, users, employees, families, at the center of every decision. The sound of small feet pattering down the hall announced that the kids were awake. Ethan stacked the documents, now organized by what he fondly called the Chloe method, and went to make breakfast. "Mr. Ethan," Chloe asked as he flipped pancakes, his new specialty, "did you fix your work problem?" "Thanks to you, sweetheart," he smiled. "Sometimes we need new eyes to see things differently." "Like when you helped me see that shadows aren't scary?" "Exactly like that." Later that day, as he prepared his presentation for the board, Ethan included something unorthodox, a series of simple, colorful slides with charts so clear a child could understand them. Because sometimes, he was learning, the most elegant solutions come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it takes a 6-year-old reorganizing papers like toys to remind you of your own humanity. And sometimes, the biggest corporate crisis can be solved with a little childlike innocence and a whole lot of love. That night, during story time, Ethan told a new version of the brave little bear tale. This time, the bear had to save his honey factory, which had started to forget the importance of making things with care. "And you know what the bear learned?" he concluded, watching the children's eyelids grow heavy. "What?" Owen yawned. "That sometimes the best ideas come when we make an organized mess." Chloe gave a sleepy smile, clearly proud of her role in saving Daddy's company, even if she didn't quite understand how she'd done it. And Ethan, watching his 3 children drift off to sleep, marveled at how much his life had changed. Decisions that once seemed so black and white, profit above all, efficiency at any cost, now felt hollow and meaningless compared to a child's smile. Sterling Dynamics would survive this crisis, he was sure of it. And it would emerge stronger, more humane, because it now had something no algorithm could ever compute: the heart of a family. "Daddy, breakfast is burning!" Ava's voice jolted Ethan from his thoughts. In the penthouse kitchen, smoke billowed from a skillet where he was attempting to make pancakes while mentally rehearsing his presentation for the board. "Sorry, Princess," he grinned, scraping the charred remains into the trash. "Looks like we'll have cereal today." "Again?" Owen sighed dramatically. "You only burn breakfast when you have an important meeting." Ethan paused, the cereal box halfway to the table. When had his kids become so perceptive? "It's a really important meeting," he admitted, pouring milk into their bowls. "I'm trying to change some things at the company." "Like what?" Chloe asked, already dressed and ready for her day. "Well," Ethan considered how to explain complex corporate policy to a 6-year-old. "I'm trying to make the company a little more like our family." Chloe's eyes lit up. "With story time and everything?" "Something like that," he chuckled. "But first, I have to convince a few people." A few hours later, Ethan stood before the board of Sterling Dynamics. The virtual conference room was packed with the digital faces of executives, investors, and shareholders, all waiting for him to explain the radical new direction he was proposing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ethan began, adjusting the tie Ava had picked for him that morning, blue with tiny penguins. 3 months ago, I was a different man, a CEO concerned only with numbers, goals, and results. He clicked to the next slide, revealing a picture of his old office, minimalist, sterile, and cold. This was my world, organized, predictable, efficient. Another click brought up a current photo of the same space, now decorated with children's drawings and a small activity table in the corner. "And this is my world now." A murmur went through the virtual meeting. David Miller, his CFO, looked particularly uneasy. "Ethan," he interrupted, "we understand your personal life has changed, but—" "It's not just about my personal life, David," Ethan gently cut him off. "It's about finally understanding what real innovation is." The following slides were filled with surprising data. Studies on productivity in companies with strong family support policies, statistics on talent retention, and success stories of businesses that had embraced a more humane approach. "But numbers are only part of the story," Ethan continued. "Let me tell you about Priya, from our development team." The screen showed a photo of a programmer everyone recognized. "Priya has 2 young children. Last week, her youngest got sick. In our current system, she had 2 choices: miss work or leave her sick child with a babysitter. Neither is ideal." Ethan paused, the memory of Chloe in the hospital still fresh in his mind. But what if Priya could work from home that day? What if we had a space for kids in the office for days when she had to bring them in? What if our corporate culture recognized that being a parent isn't a barrier to professional excellence? It's a source of creativity and innovation? Another click revealed the detailed architectural renderings for a state-of-the-art corporate daycare. "This is just the beginning. I'm proposing a revolution in our corporate culture. Flexible schedules, remote work as a standard option, extended parental leave for both mothers and fathers, and an on-site child development center." "The costs would be astronomical," one investor cut in. "The cost of doing nothing is higher," Ethan countered. "Do you know how many talented engineers we lost last year to companies with more family-friendly policies? 43. Do you know how much it costs to train and integrate each new hire?" The numbers that followed were compelling, but Ethan had something more important to add. "But beyond the numbers, let me share something I learned recently." He opened a video file showing Chloe intently reorganizing his documents in her own unique way. My daughter taught me that sometimes you need to shuffle everything around to see the hidden patterns. That's how we uncovered the irregularities in our AI division. The board watched, fascinated, as Ethan explained how a child's innocent perspective had led to one of the biggest corporate discoveries of the year. Innovation doesn't come from exhausted, worried people torn between work and family. It comes from rested minds, light hearts, people who know they can be top professionals and present parents at the same time. The presentation went on for 2 more hours. Ethan gave examples from his personal life, how learning to braid hair had taught him patience in tense negotiations, how telling bedtime stories had honed his communication skills, how organizing toys with the twins had inspired a new project management system. By the end, even the most skeptical faces in the virtual room seemed to be softening. "I never thought I'd say this, David," admitted one of the older board members, "but I think you're right, Ethan." He hesitated. "I've been missing a lot of my own daughter's ballet recitals." When the meeting finally ended, Ethan felt both drained and exhilarated. He checked the time. He could still make it to pick up the kids from school. On the drive, he got a text from Amanda. The board had approved his proposals. All of them. Sterling Dynamics was officially entering a new era. "How was your meeting, Daddy?" Chloe asked as he arrived at the school. "It was great," he grinned. "And you know what? It was thanks to you." "Me?" "Yes. Remember when you organized my papers? That helped me see things differently. And now we're going to help other families too." That night they started a new tradition, Wednesday movie night. Ethan's once pristine home theater was now a cozy nest of cushions, blankets, and an excessive amount of popcorn. "Which movie are we watching?" he asked, settling in among the kids. "Mary Poppins," all 3 answered in unison. As the film started, Ethan reflected on the dizzying pace of change in his life. On his phone, emails praising his innovative vision were piling up. The tech press was already buzzing, calling Sterling Dynamics the company of the future. But here, with Ava snuggled against one side, Owen on the other, and Chloe excitedly commenting on every scene, Ethan knew he had found something far more valuable than corporate success. He had found balance. The following Sunday, they started another tradition, picnics in the park. Emily prepared an elaborate basket, and the children beamed in their sun hats. "Daddy," Owen called out while nibbling on a sandwich, "are you still the boss of the company?" "I am," Ethan answered, helping Ava with her juice box. "Why?" "Because now you play more. Before, you only talked on the phone." Ethan's heart squeezed. "That's true, but I found out I can be a good boss and a good dad at the same time. I just had to learn how." "From us?" Chloe asked proudly. "From you," he confirmed, "my best teachers." That night, gearing up for another busy week, implementing new policies, remodeling office space for the daycare, training staff on the company's new culture, Ethan watched his children sleep. Sterling Dynamics was changing, evolving into something more compassionate and humane. But the biggest change had happened inside him. Because sometimes true balance isn't about compartmentalizing your life into perfectly organized boxes. It's about letting the different parts of who you are mix and enrich each other, like children's drawings on a corporate wall, like penguin pattern ties at serious meetings, like bedtime stories that spark corporate revolutions. Like a man who learned that being a father didn't make him a less effective CEO. It made him a better leader. The tie, covered in little teddy bears, wasn't exactly Ethan's usual choice for an important occasion. But when Ava had picked it out especially for the final adoption hearing, he couldn't refuse. "Because teddy bears are family," she had explained with the irrefutable logic of a 3-year-old. The San Francisco family court was crowded that morning. In the front row, Emily Carter, now Sterling Dynamics head of human resources, held the twins' hands. Chloe sat between her and Amanda, her legs swinging nervously. "Adoption case number 2025-789. the clerk announced. "Petitioner, Ethan Alexander Sterling." Ethan stood, adjusting his teddy bear tie. He had prepared for this moment for weeks, but now, seeing his 3 children, because in his heart they already were his, every rehearsed speech felt hollow. "Mr. Sterling," Judge Martinez began, "this is a very unusual case. 3 children found in extraordinary circumstances, and an adoption request from a single executive with no prior experience raising children." Ethan nodded, his heart pounding. "However," she continued, "I have here a substantial stack of testimonies and evidence, starting with Lisa Martin." Lisa, the social worker who had initially been so skeptical, stood. Ethan noticed her eyes were slightly misty. "Your Honor," she began, "in 15 years as a social worker, I have never witnessed such a profound transformation, both in the children and in the adult in question. When I first met Ethan Sterling, he was the stereotype of a CEO, focused only on work. Today," she paused, looking at the kids, "today he is one of the most devoted, loving fathers I have ever seen. The children have flourished under his care. Chloe, who carried a huge burden for her age, is a child again. The twins, who were timid and scared, are now confident and happy." The judge nodded, flipping through more documents. "I also have impressive statements from Sterling Dynamics employees." "Yes, Your Honor," Ethan's lawyer chimed in. "Mr. Sterling not only transformed his personal life, but revolutionized his company to support other families." A video started playing on the courtroom screen. Sterling Dynamics employees shared their stories. A mother who could now nurse her baby at work, a father who no longer missed his child's school performances, families finally finding work-life balance. "Sterling Dynamics' new corporate daycare is a model in the industry," the lawyer continued, "and the family-friendly policies Mr. Sterling has implemented are already being studied by other companies." "Impressive," Judge Martinez said. "Mr. Sterling, would you like to say anything?" Ethan stood again, but instead of walking to the podium, he went to where the children were sitting. "Your Honor," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "a few months ago I thought I knew everything about success. I had built a billion-dollar company, lived in a penthouse, and was respected in Silicon Valley." He paused, smiling at Chloe. "Then, on a sweltering July afternoon, I found 3 children at an abandoned gas station, and I discovered I knew nothing about what really matters." Ethan recounted the awkward first weeks, the improvised stories during the storm, the nights in the hospital with Chloe. "I learned more about leadership from a 6-year-old organizing toys than in years of business school. I learned more about courage watching Owen finally ride a bike without training wheels than in all my corporate negotiations. And I learned more about love watching Ava draw pictures to brighten my office than in my entire previous life." Quiet tears streamed down Emily's and Amanda's faces. Even Lisa discreetly dabbed her eyes. "These children didn't just let me be a father. They taught me to be human again. And in the process, they changed not only my life, but the lives of hundreds of families through the changes at Sterling Dynamics." Judge Martinez gave a gentle smile. "Chloe, Owen, Ava, would you like to say anything?" Chloe stood first, her small hand gripping Ethan's tightly. "When our mom went to heaven," she said clearly, "I thought we'd never have a family again. But then we found Daddy. And he didn't just give us a home. He learned to braid hair, and he tells stories, and he even burns pancakes just to make us laugh." Warm laughter rippled through the courtroom. "I love him," Owen declared simply, hugging Ethan's leg. Ava, not to be outdone, added, "And he wears the ties we pick out." Judge Martinez glanced over the documents one last time, but her smile already revealed her decision. "Mr. Sterling, your transformation extends far beyond what we normally see in adoption cases. You haven't just created a home for these children. You've created a movement that's helping countless other families." She paused solemnly. "It is with great pleasure that I approve this adoption. From today onward, Chloe, Owen, and Ava are officially Sterlings." The courtroom erupted in applause. Ethan knelt down, pulling all three children into a tight embrace, not caring about the tears streaming freely down his face. "Are we a real family now?" Ava asked. "We always have been," Ethan replied softly. "This just makes it official." Months later, the penthouse was unrecognizable. The once minimalist space had become a vibrant, chaotic home where modern art coexisted with children's drawings and designer furniture lived in harmony with colorful toys. On the balcony, an impressive new structure stood out, a high-tech treehouse designed by Ethan with expert consultation from the children. It featured solar panels, Chloe's idea, an LED-lit slide, Owen's suggestion, and an internal communication system that consisted of cups connected by a string, Ava's insistence because it's more fun than intercoms. In his office, now decorated with an eclectic mix of corporate awards and kids' crafts, Ethan regarded two photos side by side. The first showed him accepting the Most Family-Friendly Company of the Year award, with Emily beside him holding the trophy. Sterling Dynamics had become a benchmark, and other Silicon Valley companies were starting to follow suit. The second photo, taken the same day, showed him with the children at the park, Chloe teaching the twins how to blow soap bubbles, everyone laughing, perfectly imperfect and completely happy. "Daddy," Chloe called from the doorway, "it's time for my piano lesson." Ethan smiled. His oldest daughter had discovered a natural talent for music, and the piano lessons had become one of his favorite parts of the week. "Coming, sweetheart. Where are the twins?" "At the playground with Emily. She said she wants to talk to you later about the new guidelines for the corporate daycare." Ethan nodded, amazed at how perfectly Emily had transitioned into her role as head of HR, bringing her years of childcare experience to revolutionize the company's policies. As he followed Chloe to the living area, where a grand piano now took center stage, Ethan pondered his true legacy. It wasn't Sterling Dynamics, though the company was thriving and more humane than ever. It wasn't his fortune, which now had a far more meaningful purpose than simply accumulating more zeros in a bank account. His real legacy was in these small moments: piano lessons with Chloe, bike rides with Owen, painting sessions with Ava. It was in bedtime stories, Sunday picnics, and ties with funny prints. His legacy was the love he had learned to give and receive, the lives he had helped shape, and the family he had built, not through blood or obligation, but through choice and love. Taking a seat beside Chloe on the piano bench, Ethan Sterling, the man once known as the architect, smiled as he heard the first notes of a new song. Because sometimes the greatest success isn't measured in dollars or shares, it's measured in smiles, hugs, and tiny moments of pure joy. It's the kind that not only transforms one life, but generations to come. It's what happens when you find three children in an abandoned gas station and discover that sometimes the greatest fortunes aren't the ones you make, but the ones you find when you least expect them.